Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, y'all. Part two is in session.
Again.
Boom. Period. Part two. Oh my goodness. So we were wrapping up talking about Storm and her battle with Despair. It was awesome. We love that. But y'all, the next thing that happens in the story is probably like, and this is actually, it happens, the Storm part was split into two. You'll see it when you watch the show. So watch the show, okay? But the crazy thing is like, there is this major climax that happens, in an episode number 5, which is the only episode that they are submitting for the Emmys.
Oh, are
And
they?
I think that is with good reason. This episode will probably win. The episode is episode 5, Remember It. And I think this was probably one of the most difficult episodes to watch for me.
Yes.
This was a very hard, and I had no idea at the beginning of the episode it was going to be
Where we were going.
where we were going at all. So we're setting a scene. There's a mutant nation, Genosha, that is getting ready to be presented before the UN for recognition as an actual nation. And because they have been chosen and they've been, it's going to happen, they are throwing this grand banquet. It's this huge gala, and they want all the people there. And Magneto has been invited because Magneto was one of the reasons Genosha was established. So Magneto has been invited, and they've told him to come to Genosha for this banquet. And so he decides he's going to invite an X-Men to go with him because he has an idea. So he's going to bring an X-Men, and he chooses Rogue. And we begin to learn there's an undertone as we start seeing throughout the show. There's this undertone of romance between Rogue and Magneto because prior to joining the X-Men, Rogue was on Magneto's team. She was part of the Brotherhood of Mutants. And they might have had a little romance because Magneto can cover his entire body in magnetic energy, therefore making him immune to Rogue's touch as long as he's covered in magnetic energy, electromagnetic energy. And so he is the only person Rogue can physically. He is the only person, though, Rogue can physically touch at this point in her story. And so we start noticing a little thing going on. But at the same time, Rogue has her other man on the side, which is Gambit. Yeah. And when I tell y'all another character that they got right, artistic
right
design,
and wrong at the same time.
Right and wrong. But artistically, they got Gambit right.
They did him so right.
So right. The accent, the energy, the sex appeal, the clothing, the charm, the powers, all of it. They got him right. He wasn't just a filler character. He was a man of action. He was a man of the story. And so Rogue has been chosen to go with Magneto, and Gambit. And I'm going along too. I'm going because I see what's going on between you two.
Period.
I'm going too. So we've got Rogue, Magneto, and Gambit going to the banquet at Genosha. And when they arrive, Magneto is being ushered separately to go meet with the council. And in meeting with the council, we realize this is where Madeline Pryor has been all along. Ever since she left the X-Men, she accepted a role. And essentially they were like, the one thing we needed was a Jean Grey, and now we got one. So we're set. We're good. And it was perfect use of her. I think it was wonderful use, and I'm glad that they put her there. Like it made wonderful sense. At the same time, what begins to happen over the course of this episode is, again, one of the hardest episodes to watch all season long because of the intensity and the heartbreak that the audience experiences. So the banquet essentially is about to happen, and Rogue is having this moment where she has to pick. I think Gambit told her she had to pick. I feel like he presented
because girl, ain't nobody.
You need to pick. Is it me or is it him? Because I see that there's something going on. And she kind of makes the decision to go with Magneto because Magneto has talked to the council, and essentially they're asking him to come basically be the king. Mm-hmm. Come run this place. And he doesn't really want to, but he also wants to uphold Charles' legacy and everything he had essentially been given and promised Charles, trying to do right. Magneto, he says, well, I'll do it if y'all allow me to rule with one of the X-Men. and he
Yeah.
had in mind all along for it to be Rogue, and so he presents that to her. And so Rogue chooses to lead with Magneto. Now, after choosing to lead with Magneto, they go to the banquet. There's a wonderful dance scene. You got to watch it, y'all. I mean, like, what I loved about Genosha, before we get into the craziness of the episode, is that they had created a nation that was
Yes. It was like
peaceful.
yeah.
It was beautiful. Everyone was using their abilities to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
The kids were playing. Everybody, like, the shops were open.
Everybody was
The
minding
food
their
was being
business.
cooked. Everybody was dancing and in the town square and listening to music and just having a good old time. And even
Mm-hmm.
at the ball, they were again having a good time and enjoying each other's, company and
Not
celebrating being a
bothering
recognized nation,
nobody.
not bothering anyone at all. Just minding their business, as one does. And an attack comes on Genosha, and I'm not going to spill all the details of this attack because it's one of those things that you have to watch.
You
You
have
have to watch
to
it.
watch this episode.
You have to watch it.
Embrace yourself as you do.
Embrace yourself as you do, because spoiler alert, we do lose Gambit in this, and in this battle,
Disrespect.
prior to losing Gambit, Rogue had changed her mind. She still wanted to lead in Genosha, but she wanted Gambit.
Yes.
And they ended up fighting alongside each other after she's made up her mind. She's decided what she's going to tell him as soon as she has the opportunity. She's going to let him know it's him. They're fighting and they're fighting and they're fighting these sentinels and they're fighting a master mold, which is a big machine that prints more sentinels. And it's just mayhem going on in Genosha. Complete and utter chaos. Mutants being killed left and right.
Literally.
And trying to protect each other. And we see Nightcrawler, another character, done right.
Yes.
The German accent. Ooh, chef's kiss.
Personality, like everything about the way he looked, everything was on point.
Even his role in the council for Genosha, he was like the minister of faith or the liaison of the faith communities or something like that. His character's always been a devout Catholic, very, very devout in his faith, but also dealing with the struggle of being like half demon, and traveling through the brimstone realm every time he flashes.
It's so crazy that would be my favorite character. Like, it's so typical me.
I'm like, I don't think it's crazy that would be your favorite character. I was like, I don't think so at all. I think it's spot on.
Of course, I'm drawn to the half demon who has a good heart. Of course, I would be.
And he is literally the noblest of characters at all times. Like, so it's beautiful. I think it's actually beautiful that Nightcrawler is your favorite character, because there's a lot of connection there. But Rogue and Gambit fight side by side, and that fight scene is brilliant. What Gambit does in sacrificing himself,
it was brilliant until it wasn't.
It was brilliant until it wasn't. But what we got to see from him that we have never, in my opinion, seen.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen
in any form, besides comics, is him use his powers in a way that was absolutely massive. Like OP level, big deal power usage, and brilliant and beautiful at the same time, because he is he essentially manipulates kinetic energy, but he kind of charges things with kinetic energy. What he touches, he can charge with kinetic energy. And the way that he eliminates that huge sentinel, y'all just have to watch it. Again, this is a scene you have to watch, but in losing him and in losing Magneto, we have now set a climax where we've got an extremely distraught, grieving, pained Rogue who is already, for those who don't know, she's already on the edge. But for those who don't know how powerful of a mutant Rogue is, because again, a lot of the characters have always been in the shadow of Professor X and Wolverine.
It's never really gotten
into. But people don't know Rogue's powers. She literally got her powers, not her ability to steal others' powers, like absorb their powers and their memories and their energy. That was her natural mutant ability. But her super strength and her flight and her kicks and her punches and the power behind them she stole that power and absorbed the consciousness of Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel. She's the
Mhm.
reason Captain Marvel retired in the comics. So that's where the powers came from. Oh Lord. As y'all know, she is not a fan of Captain Marvel, but Captain Marvel is also very unlikable.
Shout
So,
out to Rogue. Just more
but
reasons to like her.
it was, we get to see after the attack on Genosha, Rogue emotionally, no, I don't want to say reacting. I don't even want to say that. Like, because I feel like everything she was doing was justified. I don't think anything that Rogue did in trying to get to the bottom of things from the attack on Genosha was unjustified. Even when she
I don't
threw
think so
Steve,
either.
Captain America made a little, he made a cameo, y'all, and she mollywopped through his,
We can get
through
tossed
his shield.
around
Get out
sometimes.
my face. If you're not going to help me, go mind your business somewhere else.
Go no, Boy Scout. We already got one.
Come
We
on now.
already got one.
Come on now. And so, it's interesting because all along this whole time, while the attack on Genosha is happening and there's all of this friction and tension and turmoil, Professor X is recovered. He is
Walking
recovered
around
in the Shi'ar Empire, and
gracefully,
he is
peacefully,
engaged to the
smelling the
Empress.
sun,
He
catching
is
a
engaged to the Empress, and he is up for citizenship. I have typically been a fan-ish of Professor X because of how powerful he is. I'm really big on mind powers. I think that they're just like them
Mhm.
going into the astral realm and even getting to see some of that in the show. But I've always found those mutants who have those mental abilities fascinating. Storm's always been like number one, but then it's always been like the next few have almost always been psychics. Almost always. Um, this show, I think, has shown Professor X to me in a different light because I also began to realize and remember so much of his past. And Professor X he is like Big Mama in Soul Food. He's low key the villain. Um,
Very much that.
because
How dare you?
how dare you? I'm over here
Yeah.
just, everything's running across, like I'm hearing Milky Way Ghetto,
How
and I'm
dare
seeing, you
you?
need to like wipe your memory and
Now,
all of
don't
the
get me wrong.
things.
Her sister was OD'ing, but she was on point with the Milky Way and Ghetto
She was on point
for
with
sure.
every read of Earth. Every read of Earth she had was on point. Because
She
when
was
she
doing
said
a lot
Milky
with the
Way
forgiving
Ghetto,
them, but yeah, Milky Way Ghetto was spot on. I said that is now in my vocabulary.
I loved it. And
It's
it
in my
has totally
vocabulary.
been in Dee's vocabulary. Absolutely. Uh, but again, without spilling all the details, there are these trials that are essentially happening where if they're going to offer him citizenship if he's willing to wipe his memory of his X-Men, of everything. And as he's observing the Shi'ar Empire and considering it, because he was considering it,
Yeah,
and
he
he's
reacted.
observing the Empire, there is so much infighting that begins happening between the sister and the council and the Empress and all of them there. And he begins to realize how flawed they are in their own politics. And that is, I will say, my favorite moment of Professor Xavier all show long was when he snatched them all into that classroom in the astral realm. And it's like he had a moment where he had to remind himself. And I think that comes up in the show. Now that I'm thinking about it, that was an overarching theme of the show, is remember who you are the
Yeah.
whole season, because we had it going on with Jean Grey and Matt. We
Mm-hmm.
have it happen with
Yeah, going on
Storm.
with
We have
Storm.
it happen with Professor X. We have it happen with
Even
Magneto at
Rogue
the
kind
end.
of too.
Even Rogue. But even the big moment with Magneto that we're going to get into.
Mm-hmm.
There's this central theme. Cable. There's so many characters. Morph. There's so many characters who have to remember who they
Even
are.
what's his name that controls the Sentinels? What's it? The
Oh,
mutant who actually
Bastion.
he even
Bastion. Yes. I think we just uncovered a central theme right there.
yeah
Like, because the moment that happens where Professor X remembers who he is, and he's like, hold up, I'm over here trying to reason with them in the natural. Why don't I just use my ability, like what I am most powerful at? And he snatches them all into the astral realm and puts them in a classroom to educate them on why they have been approaching living and conquering wrong. And it was about to be, I think, a master class in true education. I think he was actually approaching that from a wonderful point of view and perspective. But
Which
what
is even
happens,
crazy because you got time to do that up here, but you didn't have time to do that over there. You didn't.
I don't
You
think it's
didn't
as
think about
simple as
that.
he didn't have time. I just think he didn't. Like, I
You
think he
didn't.
had done it when he was
He
there.
always gives the humans so much
He
and this is
does.
what pisses me off with him is that you give them more grace than you give people like you or you adjacent. Because the people they're not humans. They're, whatever they are.
Hmm.
And it's like you always like you're willing to go the extra mile to make sure that these people who are closer to what you are understand your perspective and how you feel like things should be
Hmm.
done, but then you couldn't down here. We could have avoided all this Genosha crap. Because you could did this years ago. You could have just scooped up all the people years ago.
And put him
Scoop
in a
up
classroom.
the United Nations. Just scoop everybody up. Put them in the classroom in the astral realm. You could have gave a little speech then. Like
Now, what
it
I
just
will say,
makes me
and
mad.
historically, I have defended Professor X a little bit more, and I'm not saying this just to defend him, but I'm going to say this as additional context because devil's advocate in the room. I want to hear what you say to this because one thing that Professor X has always been consistent on is when he's been asked in the comics, in video games, and shows, and movies, and all things, when he's been asked to just take over the minds and to talk to the people in the way that they need to hear it, he's always said, if I show them how powerful I am, they'll have nothing but fear for all mutants. So do you think that even if he hadn't done that on Earth, he would have actually been able to make change? Because remember that moment where Magneto has all of the UN or the council that was about to try him in the UN and he took them all
Mhm.
up in the atmosphere and he was like,
Mhm.
please don't make me fail y'all. Please don't make me prove y'all right. Like, please don't do that. But it also did it change anything? Because we see Magneto protocols later on in the
But
show.
that's my thing is like, why in this moment do you feel like, or in the other moment that we'll talk about later, why in those moments did you feel like, okay, it'll work for these people, but this particular group of people that really, let's be clear, you got your little school or whatever, but you're fighting for the humans. That's who you're fighting for. You're fighting for the humans because you will go to bat and go to hell and high water to make sure that everybody understands their plight and their point of view and why we need to just show them so much grace. But you don't show that same grace to other mutants. You don't show
I
that
don't
same grace to
know. I
Magneto.
don't
You
know
don't
that
show, you know what I'm
I.
saying?
Now, I also don't know that I agree with the idea that he doesn't show the same grace to all mutants. I will agree with the fact that he doesn't show that same grace to mutants who stand on the other side of the fence. Like,
But
because
what's
he
the other
does it.
side of the fence? And,
But
and who?
like,
Because
because
you
the thing is,
technically
they
he
want
created the
they
fence.
want some. They both created the fence. It's not just Professor X who created the fence. It's both of them because it
Yeah,
was the split in their friendship that led to the
yeah,
differences in mutants. Which is why,
yeah.
for me,
That's
I
true.
can't help but see because I even feel like if you and I were in the past, like we're in the '60s, and we were still best friends,
We
you would
would
have been with
still be
Malcolm.
best
We
friends,
would
but
still be best
I'd
friends.
be like,
You'd
okay,
be with
Jay, I gotta
Malcolm, and I would be with Martin. And that's what it would have been. And I don't think it
go.
would have
Don't come
made
to the
us
meeting.
it wouldn't have made us any less friends. We would have just had different approaches on the same issues. And there were a lot of
Yeah.
families and people who were like that. So for me, like, even as we've talked about the show throughout the season, and I found us like having that heated, friendly banter about the show,
Hmm.
even now I'm seeing it from a little bit of a different perspective because I see where you're absolutely right in what you're saying. Because I do agree with you. At the
Hmm.
same time, in addition to what you're saying, I see why he would feel justified because both of them felt justified in their actions. The times when Magneto would do things that look clearly wrong to the natural, regular eye, but
Hmm.
because he was doing it from a lens of, I've got to protect my people, does that make it okay? Because it's, I've got to protect my people, even though I've got to love these people over here to do it, or I've got to rob this bank over here to do it, I'm going to protect mine, or because I put y'all over here. Like, so I
But see, my
see
thing is like, I think my thing is even with when you say like the other side of the fence, it's like for them, like it's like us, it's either our way of doing it or it's like it's their way of doing it for both of them, right?
both of them,
It's
exactly.
it's it's this way of doing it or this way of doing it. But the humans are the same way. It's
Hmm.
it's our way of doing it that makes us feel comfortable. We on a different side of the fence too. But he treats them when he's in opposition with like Magneto or people who think like Magneto, he treats it as if him and the humans are on the same side of the fence. But y'all are not. You know what I'm saying? Essentially, I'm upset because of the same things that you saw. You just don't have the same reaction to it that I do. You know what I'm saying? And what makes me so bad? Because they killing people just like I am. So how they get?
I'd go so
You know
far
what
as
I'm
to
saying?
say they have the same reaction, just on completely opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. And
Because
that's why I don't understand why Magneto's the villain. Like, how
but
did
I
he?
don't think,
How
but
does
see
he get? You know,
now that you've given me additional language, I don't think because in this show, Magneto
he's not.
was never the villain in the show.
Yeah.
They did not at any point make him the villain of the show. There were times when we could see he was villainized to human society, but they never made him the villain of the
Or to
show,
the
which I
other
think was great because I do think invigorating the show and bringing it into a live action form, I think that it would be in their best judgment and in their best interest to not make Magneto the villain, to
Yeah.
make Magneto the rival,
And that's what
make
I like about
Magneto
Days of Futures
the
Past.
anti-hero, but
Yeah.
don't make him the villain, because that's really what Magneto is. He's the anti-hero. He's not the villain. And Professor X is more like God complex savior hero. So we've got two heroes that are on very different ends of the
Yeah.
spectrum. So I think viewing it like that, we have a different conversation. We sit at the table a little bit differently, because
Yeah.
I do agree with you. I think that Professor X only making the choice to come back home when he realized something was wrong frustrates me. It frustrates me because you also, at this point, you let it slip. You've been checking in on them.
And
You ain't left nobody a message.
whispered in the wind, a
You ain't
message
told
in the
nobody you
Bible.
good or nothing, but you've eavesdropped enough to know people been making love, people been partying, people been having a good old time, everything been looking like they've been taking care of business. And that's my issue, is if you are the most powerful telepath in this universe, you could have easily just checked in and be like, hey, I'm alive. Thank y'all for keeping up the ruse that I'm dead. I'm good. I'm healing well. I'm thinking about staying here. I'm in love with old girl. Like, you could have been doing that, even if it were just
And
with
that's what
Jean
makes me
or just with
even
Cyclops.
madder. That makes me even madder because it's like you were willing to leave everything to Magneto and walk away. But then after this chaos happens, Genosha happens, and understandably everybody who was there is upset and want to retaliate for what happened. And you come back on your white horse all noble and, no, you can't do this. No, you have to do it this way. Where have you even been? And
We
my
have to
way was
save
good
him.
enough. It was good enough when I was cleaning up your mess to do it my way. When you left everything to me before Genosha, you wasn't going to come back. It was good enough then. Oh, but now you got a problem with how I like to do things. Now it's got a little too real for you now.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you because
It's not fair
I can
at
see it a
all.
little bit. It's not. But also I will say that this show did not make Professor X the hero. They did
They
not make
didn't.
him the central
And
hero.
that's
And
what
I loved the balance. They're like, even them choosing not to make Wolverine the focus, not to make Magneto the villain, not to make Professor X the hero, not to make Cyclops perfect, not to
because he
make
wasn't a Boy Scout the whole
he
time.
was
When you
not a
saw
Boy
him,
Scout. When he
everybody
popped
had
up
a
on that
real
lady,
moment.
when he went off on that lady in that interview, I was like, get her together. Never cheered for Cyclops, but I
You
did
know it's
then.
something when they got me riding for Cyclops. You know the writing is good because it's like everything. They made everybody so real. A lot of times in comic books and stuff, like the heroes are always so like. That's what I don't like about Superman. It's just so like right. This is what's right, and
The perfect good
it's like
guy.
the world is gray. Nothing
It's
is
so gray.
completely right or
It's
completely
more
wrong.
like
It's so
Batman than it
gray.
is like Superman.
Exactly, and it's like even I look at Magneto more of even like a vigilante because he's not a villain. You know what I'm saying?
He's an anti-hero.
Even though Batman was like, I don't kill nobody, but you know what I'm saying? We can go into
Magneto,
ethics.
and Magneto doesn't historically, Magneto only kills in the most extreme of circumstances. He's not like
My back is
I
against
want
the
to go out
wall
and murder
and I gotta
people.
flex. He don't just be out here just flexing for no reason. Y'all force me to flex.
Big facts.
And then because I flex harder than everybody else, now I'm the bad guy.
So we get the introduction of the actual villain of the show, which I think was such a unique direction because we were getting hints at Sinister. We were getting hints that someone else was involved as well. And what's crazy, you know what's wild? He was in every single episode.
He was.
Bastion was in every single episode. And
And I
that's
think
what's
the chaos
wild.
of watching it one by one, we missed it. Because so much was
But
going on.
the one I caught, the only one that I caught two of them. One was when the one that he was in the picture, in Forge's picture.
Mhm.
I
I do
saw
remember that.
I
Yeah.
saw the little part of his body, and I'm like, okay. And then when he walked on screen in Genosha at the gala.
I didn't catch that.
So there was a moment, I think it's either right before or right after Rogue and Magneto dance.
Mhm.
And there's a moment they back up and you see somebody walks across on the second floor. And I think that was Bastion. But it had to be Bastion. It looks just like him. So Bastion is our super bad for this episode. I mean, for this season of X-Men 97. And he was also a character that I can say I was not expecting.
Yeah, I wasn't
I
either.
did not know we were going in that direction.
It was like we got 2 seasons in one almost.
It was so good because it's like, like when you're watching a show and they say that when you're writing a story, watching a show, a movie, anything like that, the climax is the point in the story where you hit the high point. And this is the high point and we're going down from here. Like this is the middle point of the show. And I feel like we hit that middle point, we hit that climax, and the show did not start going down.
It just
It felt like it kept inclining up until the last episode. Like I feel like the show inclined and then it ended. Like on an incline. Like it's like we rose the whole time.
It's like a whole 10 more episodes if they wanted to.
They could have easily thrown another 10 episodes. With the way that they ended, we're gonna get there. But Bastion, his powers, he is a technopath. So a technopath is one who can communicate with machinery technology, psychically, has a psychic connection to technology.
Dope power.
It's really dope. Actually, it's really dope. I know that's really cool. Like, wouldn't have to turn. I wake up and my TV turned itself on, lights turn themselves. Like everything, we control all of it. But Bastion, a little backstory on his character that becomes relevant later on is the fact that if mutants were more accepted in society and not such a hush hush thing, Bastion would have been on the first team of the X-Men. Because Professor X did approach his family about him joining the X-Men, and they did not want him to be a part of that. They were very anti-mutant, and that essentially became a core of Bastion's mindset and thought process.
Which is crazy. You've done all of this on a lie.
On a lie.
Just loud and wrong.
On a lie. And that's what's wild. So what makes him even more mad and even more difficult of a boss is the fact that because he's so connected to technology, he was able to essentially become interwoven and connected to all Sentinels that have ever existed. And he is Sentinels of the future mixed with Sentinels of the past, mixed with Sentinels of the present, and the artificial intelligence that is Sentinel technology is within him. And he is descended from it as well as the predecessor of it. It's like it's an Ouroboros,
another reminder of why AI is so dangerous.
So dangerous.
And why we shouldn't trust.
Period. But Bastion is one of those villains that when you start thinking about what it actually takes to make up his mind and his being, then you really start to realize how dangerous a villain like that is.
Yeah.
Because when we think Magneto has died in this Genosha attack, Bastion was behind that attack. And Bastion has snatched Magneto right up off that field and has him in bondage. Got him in captivity. Got the lady from the UN watching over him. And essentially that is the problem for me with humanity, is in that show, this woman who I guess thought what she was doing was noble. I don't know if she thought she was on the right side of the conversation, the right side of the table or whatever. But because of her actions and because of her connection to Bastion, that is what led to the attack on Genosha. And her guilt is what led her to letting Magneto go. Now, Bastion is so inventive and connected with technology that he was able to turn the technovirus that infected Cable into a virus that they could implant into humans to make them all anti-mutant prime sentinels. It was the wildest thing,
Wildest thing ever.
so crazy. But that is again the like why we have to be aware and wary of AI, because why could that not happen? How could they?
Literally.
Why is it they couldn't
Y'all
take
already
over
letting
the
them
the
put
flu
injections
flu
and all that
vaccine?
stuff.
Come on now.
Listen, letting y'all inject all type of stuff and we'll listen. Y'all better be careful.
You have to be
You gonna wake up a
very
sentinel.
cognizant of what is going on. And so Bastion has infected a huge portion of the human population. I mean, we see Sunspot is a character again that they've made a gateway character in this, and we're not going to spill a whole bunch about him because he was a primary part of the story, but he wasn't
I
like
do want to
the
say his
central.
man shit.
Hmm.
This mama can go.
Period. And that's a big part of the story for him is that like he's a mutant who is a DL mutant essentially. He DL. He's mutant on the down low, and he's from a very rich, affluent family, like very affluent family. They got the monies, and when his mom finds out he's a mutant, they're basically like, well, we're just gonna keep this on the hush hush. You know, nobody needs to know. But she ends up being anti him, and he is kicked out, and she has taken the anti mutant virus and is one of the people attacking them. So they are fighting these prime sentinels, and Cable comes back from the future to finally help them fight, and he get mollywopped and thrown about. I mean, they threw him all about. But what I will say was one of those beautiful moments for me was when Jean and Scott weren't sure. Hang on, before we get there, because I skipped something. So Magneto is released by the UN lady, and Magneto now becomes aware of what is going on in this world and what Bastion has unleashed upon the people, and what happened in Genosha having human involvement behind it. And he is pissed, as he should be. And this is where the saying Magneto was right comes from, because Magneto was right. Magneto was right.
Told y'all.
And he had to then show them why he is Omega level threat. And what Magneto did was he blacked out the entire planet. All electricity, all magnetism, gone. And the thing about this, we've said Omega level before, we've talked about it on previous episodes, but here's a reminder. Omega level threats, Omega level mutants, are mutants whose abilities could lead to the destruction of humanity because of how powerful they are. It's a much smaller group of Omegas.
Is leading to its own destruction. Not that they're
Period. But they are considered, if they ever take the offense against humanity, they're considered an Omega level threat. Storm is Omega level. When you control weather, you control the planet.
Yes.
Iceman is Omega level. He can freeze the planet and create a whole new ice age because he is connected to the water vapor in the air. He controls water at a molecular level. Professor X.
I would love to do that.
A new ice age? Oh,
no,
wow.
No,
control. Oh, okay. I was like, control. No. Okay. Whew. I'm like, Lord, D, we need to talk off screen. Sugar, you okay?
Yeah, I didn't thought a few times, like, God, they cutting up around here. You finna flood it? Or
come on now.
What we do? Nothing take swim lessons? What we doing?
But there's so many that Professor X. Professor X is Omega level. He actually is powerful enough to control every mind on the planet at once. He could do that, or he could take over the most powerful minds in the country, in the world, and he could do that. So
he's so
right. But in understanding that, what Magneto did is, because he controls magnetism and minerals and anything with like any type of magnetic structure about it,
which is how the whole world,
that's how orbit works, like electromagnetic energy that's in the title, they were basically like, if he don't let us go within a day, the planet is done for. It's done so. We won't be able to, he could essentially destroy us being in orbit.
Talk about how fast he did it too, because there was no
so
power
fast.
Up. There was no Super Saiyan.
When she let him go and he went, it was
Whole
like,
world.
oh my God, whole world
He
blackout.
just like,
And we get a montage, but you got to go back, y'all, and watch this montage because you
yes.
see mutants and superheroes and people all around the planet. Black Panther, certain Avengers, other heroes, and people from the comics. It's just really interesting seeing the continuity of the Marvel animated universe because I do think Marvel's doing something really, really sneaky right before our eyes. Their animations are now under Marvel Animations. They have Marvel Animations, the Marvel Studios for the MCU. They have Marvel Spotlight starting, and there's another Marvel thing. But I think they're beginning to differentiate everything so they can organize their projects better. And I think that that's smart. I think we're seeing a
Smart, yeah.
reset and a rebrand is coming. So we've got Magneto is holding the planet hostage, essentially is what they're saying. They're feeling like it's unjustified. And what we begin to realize, and that's what I was bringing up to D earlier, is that even if, let's say, Professor X had shown them prior to now how strong his ability to control minds is, and he pulled them into a classroom, there might have been Xavier protocols on the table instead of Magneto protocols. And the Magneto
I mean, but who's to
protocols,
say that you can't convince me
they
they
might
don't
already,
already have?
they
You
might already
can't
have them.
convince
No, absolutely.
me the way this work. They got them.
They
They
probably,
already
yeah,
got them.
I think you're right. They probably do because they have these protocols in front of them. And what's crazy is in the room was the president, Iron Man, Captain America, and the president's cabinet as they were trying to figure out what they were going to do. But it's just so interesting that there were two Avengers there. And in these protocols, essentially, they had decided they were going to, because when Magneto put the whole planet on lockdown, he removed Asteroid M from orbit. And Asteroid M in the comics is one of his homes that he creates at one point, just like Genosha. This was an asteroid that was floating in Earth's orbit that was a safe place for mutants. And Asteroid M, when he gets ready to ascend into Asteroid M, before he gets there, he goes to Professor X, who is now back on Earth with the X-Men, and he's called them back,
His
and
ball
everybody's
head.
together, and he pull up on them. And he is like, so some shit has happened.
Right.
Who is riding? Who with me or not? You with me or not?
I would have floated away expeditiously.
You with me or not? And Sunspot and Rogue both left to be with him. And I think those two characters were the only two that made the absolute most sense too. Because Rogue and her grief, but also her connection to Magneto, and Sunspot and his grief from his family, his
She was also the
rejection.
only one that was holding Professor X accountable because everybody else was just happy he was back.
That's
She
true.
was like,
That's
no,
true. Where have you
I
been?
see,
Gambit is dead.
a lot has happened.
Mhm.
Where have you been?
Where have you been? Like, come on now. What are you
Coming back
doing?
talking about what did he say? What was that stupid thing he said when he came back? Something like did he
Am
miss
I too
anything
late?
or
Was I too
something? Yeah,
late? Am I too late?
Or something like, get out of here. Yes, you're too late.
Yes, you're too late. People are dead. Lots of people are dead. Like, and what we see unfold over the last 3 episodes of the show, they're called Tolerance is Extinction. And I mean, that right there alone could be a whole episode. Just the idea of tolerance is extinction, because we are seeing that in the real world. That is something we are seeing in the real world. But in this show, it was beautiful how they played this thing out, because you've got Magneto, got the Magneto protocols, Asteroid M's up there. Professor X is like, okay, we got to split up the team. Some folks got to go fight Bastion, and some folks got to go deal with Magneto up on Asteroid M. What we gonna do? So Storm,
there was
Jean,
no team for the humans. Let's all take note of that.
Period.
No team for the humans. Nobody's going to get the humans. We're just going to let them slide with Genosha.
So, because you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I think it's Jean, Storm, Forge, Cyclops, maybe. No, Cyclops is not. Cyclops went up. Jean, Cable, Beast, Storm, and Forge. Forge, yeah. It might have been Morph. Morph might have been there. Morph might have been there. No, Morph was on the asteroid too. But they went down to fight. And so we see they get mollywopped and thrown around, and Forge get knocked out, Beast get knocked out, Storm get knocked out, and we're left with Cable and Jean, and they're fighting Bastion and Mr. Sinister, and essentially Sinister reminds them that because he created the virus in Cable, he can take control of him, and he takes control of him, and Cable turns on Jean, and this to me, people finally got to see the Jean that I always see when I look at her, because in this moment she's always been the one to sacrifice herself. Jean will sacrifice herself in a heartbeat. I'll go. I'll die. Kill me. Kill me. I'll do it.
I would also sacrifice her in a heartbeat. Say no.
I'd have had about enough of you ragging my homegirl like this. So Jean is fighting Cable, who technically is not her son, but this moment changes. I think for the two of them, this moment changes because Madeline did die in Genosha, which I think we didn't actually say that, but Madeline died. We didn't.
Y'all supposed to watch that episode.
Go watch it. Yeah. But this is the last piece of his mother he has left would be Jean. And so he's like shooting at her. She manages to get the gun away from him. And then he reminds her that because he's descended from her blood, he's a telepath too. And so he shoots her with a powerful psychic blast. And in that moment, this is how powerful this lady is. I be trying to remind folk, she used that moment to hold off his attack and call out to Scott so Scott could see what was going on and let Scott know that she was not going to kill his son.
That's petty.
It is not petty. I don't think it was petty because she did not kill that man's son. And she just wanted to let him know.
It wasn't me.
But she was basically like, I love you. Like, hey, I want you to know I love you and that he's being controlled. He is not trying to kill me, but they got control of him and I'm going to let go. And she lets go. And when she lets go, she falls into the water. She's dead in the water, which we've seen her die in the water before, as she always dies in the water. And everybody is knocked out except Cable. Cable get mollywopped, thrown left, right, and up, down, round, and round by Bastion. Sinister's there, just laughing, having him a good old time, and having a ball. And Bastion decides to get powerful monologue. It was a wonderful monologue. He was wrong, but a wonderful monologue where he goes in basically reading Cable for filth, letting him know, like, at this point, I am the future incarnate. Like, I am inevitable. What's about to happen is about to happen, and you're going to have to deal with it, and there's nothing you can do about it. How many times have you gone back and hit in time to try and fix this? And Cable admits he tried 200 times to fix what had happened. And he's like, listen, Madeline, he's like, and that's where we find out Madeline was never the Phoenix. But he says, there's no Jean, Madeline, no Phoenix. He's like, it's done. Like, you're done. This is it. And in him saying that, Cable's like, I think you might have been wrong about my mother. And that's why I say, I think in Cable's own mind, he had his own, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a resolution or his own, closure with his relationship with Jean. Because he's like, I think you were wrong about my mother. You might want to look around, And now the Phoenix emerges, and the Phoenix emerges bringing Jean back. And the Phoenix is so filthy with her reeds. She is the reed queen.
I was here for that moment. I'm not
the reed queen. When she snatched down,
that Phoenix came out that water.
She put that collar back together. She snatched that thing around that man's neck. She stopped all of the evil little Prime Sentinels right then. Then she snatched every bit of DNA out of Sinister's body and turned him into a shriveled up California raisin.
Okay.
Honey. And the best part, Morph was down there with them, because the best part for me in that moment was when he can't see and he turned to Morph. He's like, I can't look. What do I look like? What do I look like? And Morph turned into him and look the same to me.
Okay.
Look about the same to me because of all the hell he put Morph through. But there was a theory that I heard that as y'all watch this, I hope y'all notice, and I wonder if you noticed this, D. And I feel like you watched the same video I did too. So, but they talk about the idea that in this show, evil does not have a reflection because of the lack of a soul. Because of like Bastion didn't have a reflection because he's mostly technology at this point. Sinister has lived for hundreds of years on borrowed time. He ain't got no, he can't see his own reflection. His reflection disappeared. So it was interesting, the idea of reflections coming up in the show. And I think reflections also links right up with remembering who you are and identity. It's just the show was spot on with it. They really were with the deepness of it. But so we're beginning to wrap up this season, y'all, and we see one of the biggest conflicts of the entire show, which is where it's been leading, and that is Professor X and Magneto. And with Magneto controlling the entire planet and the orbit and everything, Professor X tells himself, see how I fix that? He tells himself that in order to stop Earth being destroyed and save humanity, in order for him to save Earth, he has to basically override Magneto's control of his own mind. And
because
what we see
sister was right about him. Everything she said. She was right.
I don't know about everything, but she was right about a lot of
little
it.
Milky Way ghetto.
Little Milky Way ghetto, for real. Now, she was right about that. But what we see, and honestly, I don't actually want to spill way too much of it. I want y'all to go watch this because I think it's actually beautiful. The battle between them. You said the what?
I said it features a bendy straw.
It does feature a bendy straw. But the finale itself is actually one of the best episodes of anything I've watched. Ever. One of the best episodes of anything I've watched. And Remember It is probably one of the best episodes out of the whole season. But the show is truly too good to just even try and rank the episodes. But what we see happening at the end is Magneto has to remember who he is because Professor X exerts his ability in a way that leaves Magneto kind of lost mentally. Once again. And in order for Earth to be saved, Professor X now has to right his wrong and help bring Magneto back into his own psyche. And in doing so, because the reason that he actually had to snatch Magneto up, you just have to watch it. You have to watch it. I'm not even gonna say it, but like D said, it features a bendy straw.
Deserve what he experienced. I'm just saying that.
There was I can't. Now that I can't.
Magneto was not
right.
wrong.
Magneto was right. I'm just gonna say Magneto was right.
Magneto was not wrong.
I'm just gonna say that. But what we see happen at the end is even when they had gone, the X-Men had gone to right the wrongs and try to stop Magneto from destroying Earth, the Magneto protocols were released anyway, which would have led to their destruction and their death anyway. Earth was willing to kill all of them in order to save. Humanity was willing to kill all of them in order to save themselves. And in doing so, they would have killed themselves anyway, because you shoot an asteroid out of your orbit, it's going to fall onto your planet. And it's far enough that it's going to now be a massive falling asteroid that it will destroy the planet. It was going to destroy the planet. And so now they're like, oh man, we've really effed ourselves with this one. And Magneto saves the day. Magneto saves the day. And in Magneto saving the day, the show ends with the X-Men and Magneto being split into 3 different timelines. And we see the reintroduction of Apocalypse. And so I think that, and with Apocalypse, we see the last thing that Apocalypse is holding in his hand, as he says, death is Gambit's Queen of Heart card. And I do think we're going to see a return of Gambit as one of Apocalypse 4 Horsemen. Now, the show has ended, but I do have some information for us all who loved the show. The guy who wrote season 1 of X-Men 97 was Beau DeMayo. did a wonderful job, beautiful job in the writing and the creation of this, reboot of the show. What he also managed to do was write season 2. So season 2 is already written by the same creator. They fired him before season 1 dropped, but season 2 is already written and has already been in production. So season 2 will be coming, and the show and the tone and the voice should still be the same because the writer is the same. Now season 3, I don't know if they can resolve this stuff and get Bo back, because Bo did a wonderful job with this season. I don't either. As long as it wasn't too crazy. If we were just having creative differences, okay.
Y'all know where the line is drawn in.
But there is a line. Come on now. There is a line. And if you cross the line, I don't support nobody who don't cross the line now. Y'all, we really hope y'all have
how Professor X crossed the line before we go, because he was dead ass wrong at the end of this show. I just want to put that out there for all the people. Professor X was dead ass wrong. Just saying.
I will say this. I'll offer this. If Professor X had not stopped Magneto, and I'm not justifying his actions,
they all would have died. We just established that.
Mm-hmm.
They all would have died anyway.
No, I'm talking about prior to, even if they had struck, he could have moved the asteroid. That's not him.
Yeah.
He could have moved the asteroid. But if he had not, I feel like what happened, the way it happened, had to have happened the way it happened for us to get the season 2 that we deserve.
Well, yeah, but in the grand scheme of things,
morally, very, yeah, he was wrong, which is why he had to right his wrong.
And
because let's talk about it. What Professor X did was Magneto attacked Wolverine, and in the attack, because Wolverine attacked, they were all fighting. It was a fight. Everybody was fighting.
Too big for his britches.
And
his metal britches.
Everybody was fighting, and foolishly, I still don't know why they brought Wolverine along for the fight against Magneto, because that never makes sense. Anytime they do it, it never makes sense. Why would you bring a guy whose skeletal structure is metal to a fight with a guy who controls metal? Okay, but Wolverine stabs Magneto in an attempt to kill him, and Magneto's response was to remove every bit of metal from Wolverine's body, as one does when they've been attacked by metal and they control metal. That's what you do. That's what you do.
You gotta get the claws out.
Professor X's response, now what I'm going to say, and D is not going to like this, like, the X-Men are like Professor X's children, but okay. So when Magneto rips all of the metal from Wolverine's body, Professor X's response is now to no longer give Magneto the option of stopping and listening to reason. Instead, I'm going to control your mind. And because you're a powerful mind and I'm a powerful mind, I'm going to have to exert myself in a way that shows you I am also Omega. They met each other at Omega level. I'm just going to say that, which is, we rarely ever get to see them do that, because usually they're usually watching the fight happen. Like in the comics, in games and shows, typically Professor X is back here watching the fight, Magneto over there watching the fight. They're like, he might be a little active. They know that usually they don't get involved in the actual tussle between the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Mutants. They typically don't get involved in the tussle, and this is one of the few times we've actually seen it played out, what happens when they both are exerting their powers at Omega level. Because I agree with you, Professor X definitely overstepped and overdid it. I also feel that it had to happen. For things to play out and then to put this big bow on this end of this storyline, it had to happen the way that it happened. Because they're not setting him up to be hero Professor X, perfect professor that we've always known him to be. This man is clearly flawed. I think the team is going to have, in this second season, they're clearly going to have some forms of resentment. He's going to hear it from them, I think, over this second season, especially them trying to find their way back in time, because we see them split and left in different timelines. So I agree with you that he was wrong. I also feel, though, it had to happen that way for them to be able to finish this storyline in a way that was like, Bo.
For the storyline, yes. But for
people
Professor
are saved.
Dead ass wrong. Because at the end of the day, you are willing to go this far for this. But all the stuff you've seen these humans do to me, all the stuff you sat back and tried to be so diplomatic, you can get past all of that How many people have they lost? You can be this little back with all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but when it comes to me, though, I am where you draw the line. I am where you, and because your way is just so right,
So
and it
right.
just got to be the way you feel like it got to be. He was dead right.
So
And what
tell
makes
me.
me more frustrated is because I feel like Magneto has tried it Professor X's way. I've tried to do your way. I tried to honor you
Mm-hmm.
when we thought you was gone, but you was up there planning a wedding, chilling, about to forget everybody. Because I'm not letting that go. But it's like I tried it your way. I tried to honor what you believed in. So don't sit here and act like I'm just this deplorable person who just out here out of nowhere just want to take out the humans. No, a lot has happened that led us here. If you was here,
Mm-hmm.
you know that. You knew what happened that made me feel the way I felt when we wasn't cool the first time. So don't sit here and act like I'm just this deplorable person that you just got to save humanity from. No, you need to be saving me from humanity. How about that?
I hear you, and I still feel like they're both wrong. Like, I don't think either of them is more wrong than the other. I don't. Like, I think that Professor X was wrong in overstepping. At the same time, I think what, I don't know what Magneto could have done differently, and I'm not going to act like I have the perfect, like, resolution.
Because I did
Magneto
save
could have
y'all
done
from the
this.
Sentinels too. I
He
did y'all a
did.
favor.
He saved them from
I
the
had to do what
Sentinels.
I did.
But
I
at the
had to.
same time, I feel like Magneto is always the one who, when he is pissed with humanity, he's like, okay, everybody has to die then. Like, I just have to kill all of y'all
That's
every
how y'all feel
time.
about us.
And I'm not disagreeing. But I'm saying that they're both extreme. Like,
Yeah.
neither of them hit just like, this is going to be, this is my compromise. This is what I'm going to do
Mhm.
instead. And I feel like even every time that they do choose the mild route, they always get shut down. They always have a reason to
It's
want to go to
always
the
a slap
extreme.
in the face.
It's
From
always a
the
slap in the
beginning
face.
of the season, I tried to come and talk to y'all, and y'all didn't snatch my homegirl. The only person I do respect, y'all didn't snatch their powers up. And you think I'm not gonna be mad?
Mm-hmm.
My homeboy is wheeling around here, Willie Nelson over here, because, and y'all think I'm not gonna be mad about it? A part of
Mm-hmm.
why I'm mad, Professor X, is for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm mad for you. Like,
And that's why I'm like, I just see so many, like, now the parallels between Malcolm and MLK, I can't help but see them, and even how relevant the X-Men are now. Like, how relevant it is being on different side, or being on the same side of the table and having different perspectives in how you handle the discussion or how you handle the media
let me
that was put in
ask you
front of you.
this.
Mhm.
If we take like ethics out of it, right? Because
Okay.
the whole thing is like we feel like Magneto goes way too far. Which,
Right.
I'll be fair, he do be
He be
he
going
be
too
like
far.
he really be meeting them where they at, but because he's so powerful, he goes too far
Mm-hmm.
naturally. Because it's kind of like if you pick a fight with me and I beat you up, you shouldn't have picked the fight, but
Mm-hmm.
I was stronger than you, so I beat you up. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying?
Right.
But it's like if you take the ethics out of it, do you feel like more people would be on Magneto's side as far as the mutants are concerned?
I feel like if you take ethics out of it, they would have long separated from humans and forced them to be somewhere else. And I feel like if
I
you
mean,
take
but we
ethics
couldn't
out
even do
of it,
that
I
because
completely
Genosha.
agree with that.
We
But no,
couldn't even
I mean like, no. I mean in the sense of like, if you took ethics out of it, they would be like, this is where you have to live. And if you
do
don't want problems with all of the mutants, you will stay where you have to live and you will get passports to get permission to come over here. Like, I feel like ethics out of it, I would completely agree with that approach as well. Ethics out of it, I would have been on Magneto's side
and you know
because
what
I
that
think
makes
it
me think
justified
about
some of
too?
their actions for sure.
Like, and I'm this is probably going to be a polarizing take,
Uh-oh.
but like it's kind of like how there's a silver lining to segregation. Black people
Mm-hmm.
were able to create these
Oh, yeah,
communities
absolutely.
for themselves. Black people were able to become successful through segregation because Black people had to shop with Black people, and because they didn't realize how much of us was really here and how powerful our dollar is, and that we actually got a couple of them. They did. It's essentially like Genosha was no different than like a
Tulsa.
Tulsa bombing or
Period.
Lake Lanier. You know,
Period.
like it's no different when they see you creating and building and minding your business, mind you. But the fact that you're creating something for yourself after we've isolated you to intentionally oppress you bothers me. It bothers me that you have a community. You know what I'm saying? So there's,
hmm
and I think that's the difference for me of why I would be on Magneto's side, because Magneto is a little more rooted in reality than Professor X. Professor X can be very green about it, even after all he's seen.
I think that
You know,
I think it's not green as much as it is hopeful. He leads with hope.
hopeful.
He leads very much with hope, and Magneto leads with reality.
But
It's
we've
like
seen
you've
what
got
hope
the romantic, you got the one who's very romantic, and the one who's
yeah.
very grounded in the reality. And I
Yeah.
think again, the truth is, or I think the best place, the best what we should be shooting for is what's right in the middle. Is where we should be shooting, like the happy place between the two, because you have to have the reality, but in order to improve reality, you have to have the hope. Like you have to
And
have
the
hope that
sad
it can be
part,
better.
but the sad part is there is no middle, because even if we decide to come to terms in a middle ground of what we believe as far as our community,
hmm
these people still have a problem with us, no
I mean,
matter
that's
what
not
we
going to change,
you know
regardless.
what I'm
And
saying?
that's, and I
So
think
it's
as
like
even being
there's
black,
essentially no, you know what I'm saying? There's like no middle ground for them to
and I
even
think
come.
that's where hope comes for. That's what hope is for, though. I think because if we get caught in just the reality, if we
Yeah.
live only in just the reality of our oppression, of of our baggage, of the things that we have to carry around, of our own trials, and then as well as the global trial, if we just stay rooted in the reality, and we
Mm.
don't have any hope, anything to look forward to, there's no point. There's no point
But
in any of
then
it.
but then when you are hopeful, you could end up on the other end of it, kind of what your for the
Which
culture
is
is
why you
about.
have, which, yeah,
You know
exactly.
what I'm
Which is
saying?
why you
And
have to
you're
balance
so
them.
hopeful that you forget the
Now, there's a
reality of
difference. There's a
life.
difference between hopeful and oblivious. There's a difference
Because
between hopeful
they
and
got
naive.
like Professor X got rose colored glasses on, and a lot of people in our community, when they become successful, will have rose colored glasses on, and they forget where we at and what the
I
tea really
now
is.
now side note, I think a lot of people in our community become successful, and it's not rose colored glasses that they put on. That's a different thing. They lose touch with reality. That's a different
Maybe that's
thing.
what it
You
is.
know,
Yeah.
because, and I think that might be a touch of what Professor X has, is he's definitely hopeful. He's the optimistic and he's the dreamer, like Martin Luther
Mhm.
King, who's like, I see how it could be. I see how
Mhm.
good it could work if we just all came together. But what we're seeing with what we saw with Malcolm and see with Magneto is that I hear you,
But we
but
got to meet them where
this
they
is, look at the stock of being we're dealing with. Look at the
at.
reality of the DNA of what we're dealing with.
Yes.
They are inferior, claiming superiority. And
Yes. And they
so
know they're inferior.
and that's why I'm like, for me, I can't say either. Like, I can say Magneto was right in claiming that the humans were against him. He was right. But what
Yeah.
I can't say either of them is more right than the other in their choice of
Both
action.
need. I think you need both,
Mm-hmm.
because you need both for the other side, because the other side has people who feel both. The other
Mm-hmm.
side has people who are completely like, these mutants got to go because they're a threat to us all, and then you got the people like, no, we can figure this out. It's not that big of a
Period.
deal.
It's both sides. Both sides
So
of the
you need
fence.
to show. I feel like you have to have both, because you have to meet people where they are, and
Where they are.
everybody
Mm-hmm.
ain't gonna be on the, you know what I'm saying? Some people will see the person who is being more diplomatic and take advantage of that,
Mm-hmm.
because they're not a diplomatic person. So you
Exactly.
need somebody like Magneto who's going to come in and be like, whoa, whoa,
Deal
whoa.
with the radicals. Radicals
So
to deal with the
don't
radicals, and
forget,
diplomats to deal with the
don't forget
diplomats.
we have powers.
Absolutely. So like Dee was saying, I do have a For the Culture, and it's been a conversation that has been a little popular, has been going a little viral. But it brings to my mind, because so many more Black people now, especially Black millennials, are traveling internationally, going on solo trips, seeing the world as you should be. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's important to be very aware of where you're going and not be caught up in the hype, in the romanticism of the place. So
Mm-hmm.
Kelly Rowland, even as successful and accomplished as she is and as known as she is worldwide, was at the Cannes Film Festival. And what we began to see over the weekend of her being there was that her treatment as a Black woman, a melanated chocolate Black woman, was very different than the white women who were on the can. I mean, she was being rushed off of the red carpet.
Mhm.
They were like, and the lady stepped on her dress and then was going
Yeah.
back and forth with her. And Kelly had to let her know real quick, like, you won't talk to me like that. I'm not your child. You will not be talking to me like that. And what broke my heart was watching her, one, have to go back and talk about what happened because it went so bad that she had to say something. But
It was the
if you
look on her
watch, it was the look, oh my gosh, the tears welled up in my eyes because watching that woman talk about it, you know that what she experienced was racism. And two, what she experienced was so raw and so real that in that moment, she was reliving it. She was
Mhm.
reliving it, and I bet what was flashing before her mind is all that I've accomplished, all that I've done, as hard as I've worked, nothing's
Just trying to
changed.
wave and say, hey.
I just want to
Just
wave and
trying-
say, hey, I'm looking
They call her
fabulous.
name.
They're calling for me. And some people are like, well, the can has a rule about not stopping on the steps. They don't have
How
steps.
many people stopped on the steps though?
Period.
Let's talk about that.
But
Talk
it was the
about they
fact
got a
that
rule. How many
and
people
and
broke
and
it?
and to connect it to what I was saying, Black people, my Black people, and Americans too, but in particular Black people. It is so important that you research and you are familiar with where you are going when you go there. Because I know this, Dee knows this, we know France is racist. France is known for their racism. They do not like Black people like that in France. Going to France is very different than going to different parts of Asia where we're celebrated. Now, they don't want to be Black, but they love Black people and Black culture. So we're celebrated in parts of Asia. Be familiar with where you're going. Now, Kelly was doing what she had to do for work, I'm sure. Film
Yeah.
festival, making appearances, I get it. But I even think about years ago, Ari Lennox in Amsterdam, Nicki Minaj in Amsterdam. Now, don't be carrying drugs and you won't be getting stopped. And that happened to Nicki Minaj and Brittany Griner. And I'm so grateful we got Brittany Griner back.
Yes. Oh my God.
But
So
even
bad.
Ari Lennox in being racially profiled a few years back in an airport and being arrested for not being okay with being racially profiled.
Just having emotions.
You have to be aware of where you're going, and you have to be aware of how safe it is for us. What are going to be, and know that racism exists everywhere. So even if
The legalized enslavement of Black Moorish people was global.
was global,
It was every.
so
They
be aware that
globally legalized that.
Europe is
It was slaves
pretty.
everywhere.
Europe has great food and stuff, but Europe is not our home.
That Europe got great food? I've
Yeah,
never heard
like
anybody say Europe has great. Oh,
so
you
you
mean like in Italy? You know
Italian,
what? When I think
Spanish
Europe,
food,
because in
Portuguese
my mind I
food,
separate them.
Grecian
I
food,
forget it's the
Mediterranean
whole.
food, honey. Now you know you're
When
talking
I
to a
think
foodie
Europe,
over here.
I just think
Britain.
that part.
They
Yes, that's
now.
what part. I
I'm
be forgetting that they
the
are.
rest. Yeah.
Because I categorize them
Now
by
you
their
know I
country.
am a culinarian over here. You know I love me some.
So when I'm thinking, I'm like, child, beans and toast, like.
No,
What?
I'm good on now the British stuff. I'm pretty good on food from the UK, but some other parts of
Beans for
Europe.
breakfast? What?
But even like their museums, the views, the wine, there's a
Yeah.
lot to experience there. My
There's a lot
advice,
of our culture in their museums. If you want to see
period,
our
period.
history, go to the museums overseas.
And if you wonder
That's
why,
where
you need to be reading more history books and learning about triangular trade in the Middle Passage. You need to be learning more about imperialism and colonialism and when they were taking over our places and bringing facts back to put in their museums. You need to understand that. Because in all honesty, if they were to just give us all of our stuff back, they wouldn't have anything left. So that has been our For the Culture. Y'all know how we do. We hope y'all have enjoyed it.
for you.
You know, this part 2 of X-Men 97, we have so many more reviews. Dee has given me a lovely list of movies to watch out, and I'm so excited to watch them. And we're sharing shows and we're sharing thoughts. So we'll see y'all next week for another episode of the 5011 Chronicles. Peace, y'all, and much love. Yeah.
That's my powers.
Period.